before we move on and I demonstrate how to create links, the one thing will come up in that process is this concept of paths. And we really have two ways of looking at paths. It's either an absolute path or a relative path. Absolute path is the easiest one to visualize, and it's the easiest one to use. It just takes more typing. For instance, if I was asking, let me change the color on that. If I was asking what is the absolute path to this stakeholders.docx file document, that would be starting from slash, including all the directories to get there, and then finally the actual document itself. So if we were to type that out, that would be slash absolute paths always begin with a slash, right? So just keep that in mind. It makes it so much easier. So projects and then stakeholder. That is the absolute path to that file. As I've said, absolute path always begins with the root of the file system, slash. So whenever you see a slash in the beginning of a path, you know you're dealing with an absolute path. Unless, of course, it's been mistyped. Let's go back here. So a relative path, let's use that same file and start talking about what a relative path is. So let's say the root user has logged in and is now sitting in root's home directory. If I was to ask you, well, first of all, what is the absolute path to root's home directory? The answer would be /root, right? We can see that up here. We can see there's a slash and there's the root home directory. Combine those two things together and you get the absolute path to that home directory. If I'm asking you, or we're going to assume that this is you've logged in here, let's say that you've logged in as root and you're now currently sitting in root's home directory, and I was to ask you what is the path to the stakeholders document, what that would be, since you're currently in this directory, root, and the projects directory is in there with you, right? So both the user, and I'm saying you're not actually physically in the directory, but you've logged in and that's where the system puts you by default, in your home directory, right? PWD. Root user logged in and by default they're put in /root. The projects folder is in /root. That's what this is meaning here. And inside of projects, there's the stakeholders document. So if I was to ask you, you're currently sitting in the root directory, what is the relative path to the stakeholders document? That would be projects, right? We don't need to specify root or the slash. In that case, projects and stakeholders. That is the relative path to that document based on where you are in the file system. That's the key thing. If, let's say, you had logged into the system as root, you defaulted into the root home directory, but then you CD'd into the projects directory. At that point, the relative path to the stakeholders directory is just stakeholders.docx, because you're in the same place as that file. Now, the one thing I will tell you, you will never fail if you put the entire absolute path. It's also could be called the full path or the fully qualified path. You'll hear me use those terms. That never fails. So when in doubt, whenever you're doing on an exam in the real world, if you're not sure, you're a little shaky, then you put the fully qualified absolute path to that thing. All right, let's try this. Let's say you have logged in to the computer. You're a member of the sales group, so you have access to the sales folder, and you've CD'd from your home directory, because you always start out in your home directory. You've CD'd from your home directory to the sales folder, and that's your current location, your present working directory. And I was to ask you, I want you to copy the accounts file to the projects folder in underneath root. Don't worry about permissions or if this is available for you to do. We're just going to assume that user that's doing this does have the permissions to do it. So how that would be, what that would look like is, and if, let's just say I want for you to use relative paths where possible. So that would be goals/account. Well, first let's put the cp command in here. cp goals/account.sx. And where do you want to copy it to? The projects folder underneath root's home directory, and that is located at /root projects. This would be using a relative path to actually get to the account spreadsheet, which, since you're in sales and goals is in the sales folder with you, all you have to specify is that underneath goals is the accounting spreadsheet. To get it into root's home folder, into the projects directory, that would require the fully qualified part of that, right? Because we can't just use a relative path because we're here, and to get to root we would have to go through the entire directory structure starting from /. So that would work. If I was asking you to give me the fully qualified, right, the absolute, I'm going to try to use that word from on now, absolute path, what that would look like is all you would do is you would just put the / and sales and another /, right? Separate sales from goals. That's it. Now that you've used the fully qualified path. There's nothing special about the relative path and using it. It's just quicker, and it means you understand how to move efficiently around at the file system. So yes, it is something you want to be comfortable with, but the bottom line is this will work in every situation as long as you're actually tabbing out the directories as you're creating them, or putting the path in there where you want to copy it to, because of course you could have a typo in there someplace. But if you're using the tab key to complete the directory names as you're building the copy command, it will work. Absolute paths always work. All right, let's get rid of that. All right, let's say you have logged into the system. You've logged into the system and you've CD'd to the root of the file system. And I want you to use a relative path to copy the stakeholders document into the sales folder. Right? So once again, we're using relative paths. So you're at root, so you don't need to specify / because you're sitting in that place in the directory structure. Let's say we were going to move it, which mix it up a little bit. So MV, we're going to move it. I don't have to put the /, I'm asking for the relative to where I am, right? I'm at /. Right below me, or in the same place that I am, is the root home directory, and in root there's the projects directory, and under projects there's the stakeholders.docx file. I gotta move this down here. It's going to be a long one. Let's get it down here. And I want you to move it to the sales folder. Once again, sales is also directly under root. At the root of the file system, and you're sitting at the root of the file system. So if I said you had to copy it to the sales folder using a relative path, let's go over here. That would be, no, you wouldn't put that there, sales, just like that. right? You don't even have to put the slash, but it makes it clearer to put the slash there, but that's it. It wouldn't be required. You could just say slash sales, but if you hit the tab key, tab would put that there. Remember, that's that dangling slash. That means it's a directory. All right, let's try this. By the way, I do have flashcards on this, so if any of the things that I talk about, I have created flashcards for these various topics. It is on Quizlet. There will be a link to this in the description below, along with a table of contents, which all my videos have table of contents. And this will help you, right? So I've pretty much built the little scenario that we have here on the board based on what I have up in Quizlet. There's not many of them. There's only 9 of them, but they will help you solidify this concept of a relative path. Once again, an absolute path is easy. Don't overthink it. I start at slash and I go all the way down. An absolute path is like GPS on your phone, right? You know, you type in, I want to go from where I currently am to, let's say, Denver, Colorado. Put that in, hit the button, show the little car icon, and it literally will tell you to pull, not pull out of your garage, but head down the street you're currently on, and it'll give you all the directions, the entire absolute path to get to that destination. That's the same thing. When you put that slash in the beginning of a path, you're basically using file system hierarchy GPS, right? You're saying from here to here. The one thing I will say to you is you don't have to be in the location, right? You might get that perception based on what we're doing here. I could be anywhere. I could be down here as long as I'm using the absolute path to get to something. So for instance, let's say right here, what did I want to do? I wanted to copy it to sales. So all I would do is just put the slash after that, come down here, put a slash here. I will get the same exact result because now I am using the absolute path from the root of the file system into roots folder, into projects, into where that stakeholders document is, and then I'm telling it to move that thing to slash sales. Once again, using the absolute path there also. If you log into Quizlet, and Quizlet is free, so you just have to create an account. Nothing's charged to get in there. Like I said, I will have links below that will lead to the various flashcard chapters that I have. And you can just click on that and go in there. If you want to be a member of the class, you can ask me to enroll you in the class. You can send me an email through Quizlet, I guess, or something, and say you want to be part of the class. When you're in the class, you do get a couple of extra benefits as far as Quizlet is concerned. Nothing for me, but they have some other options. Oh, their learning option will show up if you're in the class, but you don't have to pay for it. That's the beauty of it. If you want it on your own, then you literally have to pay a fee to get that. But if you're in my class, you can get that with the free version. All right, so hopefully that makes this concept of an absolute versus a relative path a little bit clearer, because we're going to be using this right. The next section we'll be talking about is this concept of linking. And sometimes when you're linking things, using the relative path doesn't work so well with links. And so you'll see that as we go through it. So we're going to talk about that right now.